The stars had always called to humanity. For thousands of years, people looked up at the night sky and wondered what was out there. They dreamed of distant worlds and strange creatures. They built telescopes and rockets. They sent probes into the darkness. And finally, in the year 2387, they answered the call. Admiral Kim Dae-sung stood on the bridge of the TSS Sovereignty, the largest ship humanity had ever built. It was a massive vessel, stretching nearly 2 kilometers from front to back. Its hull was painted in the deep blue of Earth's oceans, and its engines burned with the fire of 1,000 suns. This was humanity's first true starship, and Dae-sung was proud to command it. He was a tall man with gray hair and calm eyes. He had served in the Terran Navy for 40 years. He had seen battles and peace. He had lost friends and gained wisdom. Now, at 62 years old, he commanded humanity's greatest achievement. The bridge was quiet. Officers worked at their stations, checking systems and monitoring sensors. The ship hummed with power as it traveled through fold space, a method of faster-than-light travel that humanity had only recently discovered. Captain Park Yuna walked up to stand beside him. She was younger, in her late 30s, with sharp eyes and quick thinking. She had been his second-in-command for 5 years, and he trusted her completely. "Admiral," she said, "we are receiving a transmission. It is not from Earth." Dae-sung turned to look at her. His heart beat faster, but his face remained calm. "Put it on screen." The main display flickered. Strange symbols appeared, then words began to form as the ship's computer translated the message. The bridge crew stopped their work and stared. The message read, "Attention, vessels of Terra. You have entered space claimed by the Helix Dominion. You will cease all expansion immediately. You will send representatives to the Citadel of Order to submit to galactic law. Failure to comply will result in correction." This is not a request. Silence fell over the bridge. Lieutenant Choi Soo-bin, a young woman at the navigation console, was the first to speak. "Galactic law? What is the Helix Dominion?" Yuna worked at her console, pulling up data from the transmission. The signal includes additional information. The Helix Dominion is a coalition of 47 species. They have governed this region of the galaxy for over 12,000 years. They claim authority over all space travel and colonization. Dae-sung read through the attached documents. The terms were clear. Humanity was ordered to surrender all military vessels. They would accept population limits. They would pay tribute in rare minerals. They would submit to oversight from senior species who would guide their development. "They treat us like children," Commander Baek Junho said from his station. He was the ship's security chief, a muscular man with a scar across his chin. "They know nothing about us, and they already want us to bow." Dae-sung raised his hand for silence. "Send this message to Earth Command. Priority 1. The Council needs to see this immediately." The hours that followed were tense. The Sovereignty continued its journey while they waited for a response. Crew members whispered in the hallways. Some were afraid. Some were angry. All were uncertain. On Earth, the United Terran Council gathered in an emergency session. President Lee Hana sat at the head of the table, reading the alien demands. She was a woman of 60 with silver hair and a reputation for wisdom. She had led humanity through the Solar Reformation, the greatest period of peace and progress in human history. Now she faced their greatest challenge. "They want us to surrender before we even introduce ourselves," said one council member. "Perhaps we should negotiate. We are new to the galaxy. We do not know their strength." "Their strength does not matter," said another. "These demands are slavery dressed in polite language. We cannot accept them." President Hana listened to all opinions. She thought of humanity's history. She thought of the wars they had fought against each other. She thought of the plagues they had survived. She thought of the collapse of 2089, when climate change and resource wars had nearly destroyed civilization. Humanity had survived all of that. They had rebuilt. They had grown stronger. She stood and addressed the council. We will send a delegation to this citadel of order. We will meet these species and hear what they have to say. But we will not bow. We will not beg. We will represent humanity with dignity and strength. If they want respect, they must earn it, just as we will earn theirs. The council voted unanimously. Terra would not submit. Admiral Daesung received the orders 3 hours later. He was to lead the delegation. He was to represent all of humanity in first contact with galactic civilization. The weight of this responsibility was enormous, but he did not hesitate. He gathered his senior officers in the conference room. Yuna, Junho, Subin, and others sat around the table, waiting for his words. "We have been given a mission," he said. "We are going to meet beings who have ruled the stars for thousands of years. They expect us to kneel. They expect us to accept their rules without question. They are wrong." He looked at each of them in turn. "Our ancestors survived ice ages and droughts. They built pyramids and cities. They split the atom and walked on the moon. They destroyed themselves in wars and rebuilt from the ashes. Every generation faced impossible challenges, and every generation rose to meet them. We are the children of survivors. We do not know how to surrender." Junho nodded slowly. "What are our orders, Admiral?" Daesung smiled. It was a small smile, but it carried confidence. "We go to the Citadel. We listen to their demands. And then we show them who humanity really is." The sovereignty changed course toward the coordinates provided in the transmission. It would take 2 weeks to reach the Citadel of Order, 2 weeks to prepare, 2 weeks to plan. During that time, Daesung studied everything the Dominion had sent. He learned about their structure, their history, their laws. He saw a civilization that had grown old and comfortable. They had not faced a real challenge in centuries. They expected obedience because they had always received it. But humanity was different. Humanity had never known peace without struggle. They had never known progress without sacrifice. They had earned everything they had through blood and tears and determination. As the ship traveled through the stars, Daesung thought about his grandfather. The old man had fought in the last War, one of the bloodiest conflicts in human history. Before he died, he had told Daesung something he never forgot. "Never let anyone make you feel small," his grandfather had said. "You come from a people who refuse to die. That is your greatest strength." The Admiral looked out at the stars streaming past the window. Somewhere ahead, ancient beings waited to judge humanity. They would find a species that had stared into the void and refused to blink. Terra was coming. And Terra did not kneel. The Citadel of Order was the largest structure Admiral Kim Daesung had ever seen. It was not a space station. It was a world made of metal and light. The thing stretched across thousands of kilometers, bigger than some moons. Millions of ships flew around it like insects near a hive. Some were small, no bigger than shuttles. Others were massive warships with weapons that could destroy planets. Captain Park Yuna stood beside him on the bridge, her mouth slightly open. "It is beautiful," she whispered, "and terrifying." "It is meant to frighten us," Daesung replied. "They want us to feel small before we even enter." The Sovereignty received docking instructions. A path opened through the traffic, and the ship moved toward a massive hangar bay. Inside, hundreds of different vessels rested in designated spots. Each ship was stranger than the last. Some had no windows. Some seemed to be alive, their hulls pulsing like skin. Some defied all understanding of physics. The Terran ship landed with a soft thump. Soong took a deep breath and turned to his officers. "Commander Beak, you will accompany me and Captain Park. Lieutenant Choi, you have command of the ship. If anything happens to us, you are to return to Earth immediately. Understood? Subin nodded, though her face was pale. Understood, Admiral. The three officers walked down the boarding ramp and stepped onto alien ground for the first time in human history. The hangar floor was smooth black stone. The air smelled strange, like metal and something sweet. Beings of all shapes and sizes moved around them, some walking, some floating, some crawling on many legs. An escort waited for them. They were tall creatures with gray skin and 4 arms. Their faces had no expression, and their eyes were solid black. They spoke through devices on their chests. Follow, one said. The High Council waits. They walked through corridors that seemed to go on forever. The walls were covered with carvings showing the history of the Dominion. Dasung saw images of conquest and submission, species bowing before thrones, fleets burning in space. A message repeated in dozens of languages. Order through obedience. After nearly an hour of walking, they reached the Grand Chamber. It was a room so large that clouds formed near its ceiling. Thousands of observers sat in rows that stretched upward like a stadium. At the center was a raised platform where 12 thrones formed a crescent shape. Each throne was unique, designed for a different species. The humans were led to the center of the floor, where they stood like defendants in a trial. Above them, the 12 council members looked down. The largest throne belonged to Primog Varl of the Cathra. He was an insectoid creature, nearly 3 meters tall, with a shell that shone like polished black glass. His eyes were compound, reflecting hundreds of tiny images. When he spoke, his voice echoed through the chamber like thunder. You are the Terrans, Varl said. It was not a question. You are the species that has expanded without permission. You have built colonies on worlds within Dominion territory. You have constructed warships. You have violated galactic law. Daesung stood straight. His heart pounded, but his voice was steady. We have expanded to find new homes for our people. We have colonized worlds that were empty and unused. We have built ships to protect ourselves. We have violated no law that we agreed to follow. Murmurs spread through the chamber. The observers shifted and whispered. No one spoke to the Primarch this way. Varl leaned forward on his throne. You did not need to agree. Galactic law has governed this region for 12,000 years. It applies to all species, whether they accept it or not. You are young. You do not understand how things work. Then explain it to us, Una said, stepping forward. What exactly does galactic law require? Another council member spoke. She was from a species called Devolan, creatures that looked like floating jellyfish made of light. Her voice was soft but carried clearly. Galactic law requires all species to submit to Dominion oversight. You will surrender your military vessels. You will accept population limits to prevent overcrowding of resources. You will pay tribute in rare minerals. You will receive guidance from senior species in matters of technology, expansion, and governance. This is how order is maintained. Junho laughed. It was not a happy sound. You want us to give up our ships, stop having children, give you our resources, and let you tell us what to do. That is not law. That is control. The chamber exploded with angry voices. Guards moved closer, their weapons raised. Varl raised one massive arm, and silence fell instantly. You are bold for such a young species, the Primarch said. But boldness without power is foolishness. You have 60 ships. We have 60,000. You have 12 colonies. We have 12,000 worlds. You are nothing compared to the Dominion. Submit now, while you still can. They soon felt the weight of those words. The numbers were true. The Dominion was vast beyond imagination. Fighting them seemed impossible. But then he thought of Earth. He thought of the billions of people who had sent him here. He thought of their history, their struggles, their refusal to surrender, even when all hope seemed lost. He smiled. "That is cute," he said. "You have your law. We have our own." The chamber went silent. Every being stared at the human who dared to mock the Primarch. Voral's compound eyes seemed to narrow. "Explain yourself," the Primarch demanded. Una activated a holographic display from her wrist device. Blue light filled the space around them, showing a document written in human languages. "This is the Terran Constitutional Charter," Daesung announced. His voice carried across the chamber. "It was written 300 years ago, when humanity united after nearly destroying itself. It was signed by representatives of every nation on Earth. It has been amended and improved by every generation since. 8 billion people across 12 worlds live by this document." He pointed to the glowing text. Article 1 states that no external power shall dictate the governance, expansion, or defense of humanity. Article 7 states that any act of aggression against Terran citizens will be met with total response. This is our law. This is what we follow. Voral stood from his throne. He was massive, towering over the humans like a giant. You compare your 300 years to our 12,000. You compare your billions to our trillions. This is arrogance beyond measure. "It is not arrogance," Daesung replied. "It is truth. Your law governs your people. Our law governs ours. We did not come here to submit. We did not come here to beg for mercy. We came here to introduce ourselves." He looked around the chamber at the thousands of beings watching. "We are humanity. We come from a small blue world that tried to kill us with ice and fire and plague. We survived. We built civilizations and destroyed them and built them again. We split the atom and walked on other worlds. We have fought each other for resources, for land, for ideas. We nearly ended ourselves a dozen times. But we are still here." His voice grew stronger. "We do not know how to surrender. It is not in our nature. So if you want to impose your law on us, you will have to do it by force. And I promise you this, the cost will be higher than you can imagine." Silence hung in the chamber like a heavy blanket. For the first time in centuries, the High Council had no immediate response. Varl stared at the human for a long moment. Then he spoke, his voice cold. "You have 30 cycles to reconsider. If you do not submit by then, we will correct you. This audience is finished." Guards escorted the humans out. As they walked, Junho leaned close to Daesung. That was either very brave or very stupid. Daesung nodded slowly. Probably both. But it was honest. They returned to the sovereignty and prepared for the journey home. Behind them, the Citadel of Order buzzed with discussion. For the first time in 12,000 years, a species had refused to bow. The galaxy would never be the same. The journey back to Earth took 2 weeks. During that time, Admiral Kim Dae-sung barely slept. He spent his hours reviewing data, planning strategies, and speaking with his officers. The weight of what was coming pressed down on him like a physical force. Commander Baek Junho worked day and night gathering intelligence. He studied every piece of information the Dominion had sent. He analyzed their ships, their weapons, their tactics. He looked for weaknesses in an empire that seemed to have none. One evening, he called a meeting in the conference room. Daesung, Yuna, Subin, and other senior officers gathered around the table. The lights were dim, and holographic displays filled the room with blue light. "I have finished my analysis," Junho said. He looked tired, but his eyes were sharp. "The Dominion is powerful, but they are not perfect." He pulled up images of alien warships. Their fleet is massive. Thousands of vessels spread across the galaxy. But most of them are old. Some designs have not changed in centuries. They maintain order through numbers and reputation, not through innovation. Yuno leaned forward. They have not needed to innovate. No one has challenged them in thousands of years. Exactly, Junho agreed. They have forgotten what a real war looks like. Every species they encountered either submitted immediately or was crushed before they could organize. They have never faced a prolonged conflict against an enemy that refused to give up. Daesung nodded slowly. But we know what prolonged war looks like. It is written in our history. Captain Park Yuna activated another display. Images appeared showing humanity's past. Ancient battles with swords and spears. Trenches filled with soldiers in the First World War. Nuclear explosions that turned cities to ash. The flooded cities of the collapse. The burning fields of the last water war. And finally, the rebuilding, the recovery, the rise of the United Terran Council. This is who we are, Yuna said. We have been fighting since we climbed down from the trees. We fought nature. We fought each other. We fought ourselves. And every time we fell, we got back up. Lieutenant Choi Soo-bin spoke up. She was young, but her voice was steady. The Dominion sees our youth as weakness. They think because we are new to the stars, we are soft. They do not understand that our history made us hard. Daesung stood and walked to the window. Stars streamed past as the ship traveled through fold space. When we reach Earth, I will give my report to the Council. They will decide how we proceed. But I want you all to understand something. He turned to face them. We may have to fight, not because we want war, but because we refuse to be slaves. If that day comes, we will need to be ready. Not just our ships and weapons, but our minds and hearts. We will need to remember why we fight. The officers nodded. Each of them understood. They had grown up learning about humanity's past. They knew the price of freedom. The sovereignty arrived in Earth orbit 3 days later. Admiral Daesung took a shuttle down to Geneva, where the United Terran Council waited. President Lihana met him personally at the landing pad. Admiral, she said, shaking his hand. Your message caused quite a reaction here. Some are calling you a hero. Others are calling you reckless. Daesung smiled slightly. I spoke the truth. That is all. They walked together into the council building, a massive structure of glass and steel that housed humanity's government. Inside the main chamber, representatives from every Terran colony waited. The room was filled with tension and fear and determination. Daesung took his place at the speaker's platform and told them everything. He described the citadel and its impossible size. He described the High Council and their demands. He described his response and the Primarch's threat. When he finished, silence filled the chamber. President Hana spoke first. The Dominion has given us 30 cycles to submit. That is approximately 40 Earth days. What are our options? A military advisor stood. We have 60 combat-ready ships. Intelligence suggests the Dominion could send anywhere from 200 to 500 vessels for a correction action. We are badly outnumbered. Numbers are not everything, Daesung replied. Their technology is advanced but stagnant. They have not improved their weapons in centuries. We have been developing new technologies since we left Earth. Our scientists have been working on projects the Dominion cannot imagine. Another representative spoke, a woman from the Mars colony. What kind of projects? Daesung hesitated. Some of these projects were classified at the highest level. But the Council needed to know. We have developed a new weapon system called the Cascade Missile, he said. It creates a localized gravity well on impact. The effect is devastating. One missile can destroy a ship by crushing it from the inside. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Such a weapon sounded almost magical. We have also developed new tactical systems, Daesung continued. Our ships are faster and more adaptable than anything the Dominion has shown us. We can change formation instantly. We can strike and retreat before they can respond. We fight differently than they expect. President Hanna considered this. Even with these advantages, can we win a war against an empire of 12,000 worlds? No, they soon admitted. Not a direct war. But we do not need to conquer them. We only need to make the cost of conquering us too high. We need to show them that victory against humanity is not worth the price. The council debated for hours. Some argued for negotiation, hoping to find compromise. Others argued for preparation, building more ships and weapons. A few even suggested surrender, accepting Dominion rule to avoid destruction. But when the final vote came, it was unanimous. Terra would not submit. President Lee Hanna stood before the cameras that would broadcast her words to every human in the galaxy. She spoke slowly and clearly, knowing that history was watching. "Citizens of Terra," she said, "we have received an ultimatum from beings who believe their age gives them authority over us. They demand we give up our freedom, our future, our right to determine our own destiny. They call this galactic law." She paused, letting her words settle. "We reject this law, not because we want war, but because we value liberty. Our ancestors did not survive ice ages and world wars so that their children could kneel before strangers. Our grandparents did not rebuild civilization from the ashes so that their grandchildren could surrender it without a fight. Our voice grew stronger. Let them come. Let them see what it means to face a species that has looked into its own extinction and refused to die. Let them learn that humanity does not bow. Humanity stands." Across 12 worlds, people watched and listened. Workers in factories and farmers in fields. Soldiers in barracks and children in schools. Scientists in laboratories and elders in homes. All of them heard the president's words, and all of them felt something stir inside them. Fear, yes, but also pride. And something harder, something ancient that had been passed down through countless generations. The will to survive. Shipyards that had been quiet roared to life. Production increased tenfold. Scientists worked around the clock on new weapons and defenses. Soldiers enlisted by the millions. Humans from every world ready to fight for their species. The Dominion had given them 40 days to submit. Instead, humanity used those 40 days to prepare for war. Admiral Kim Dae-soon returned to the sovereignty and took command of the first Terran armada. 60 ships gathered near the outer colonies, the shield that would protect humanity when the storm came. "They think we are soft because we are young," he told his crew. "They will learn that we are hard because we never stopped fighting. The galaxy is about to meet humanity, and they will not forget us." The countdown began. 40 days, 30, 20, 10. And then the Dominion came. The correction fleet emerged from fold space like a cloud of metal and fire. 400 warships, each one massive and bristling with weapons. They formed a wall of destruction that blotted out the stars. High Marshal Selvig of the Orange stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominance. He was a reptilian creature, covered in green scales with yellow eyes that never blinked. He had commanded the correction fleet for 2 centuries. He had broken dozens of species. He had never lost. "Standard subjugation protocol," he ordered. His voice was cold and certain. "Target their outer colony first. Destroy it completely. Make an example that will break their will." The fleet moved toward Nova Bizun, humanity's largest agricultural world. 3 million people lived there, growing food for all the Terran colonies. It was a peaceful world of green fields and blue rivers. It had only minimal defenses. On the bridge of the TSS Sovereignty, Admiral Kim Dae-soon watched the enemy approach. The sensor displays showed 400 red dots moving in perfect formation. His own fleet was 60 blue dots, holding position between the enemy and Nova Bizen. "They outnumber us nearly 7-1, Captain Park Yuna said. Her voice was calm, but her hands gripped the console tightly. "Numbers are not everything," they soon replied. "Are all ships ready?" Commander Beak Junho checked his displays. "All 60 ships report ready, Admiral. Cascade missiles loaded. The Achilles Protocol is standing by." The Achilles Protocol. Humanity's secret weapon. Not a physical device, but a new way of fighting. The Dominion expected enemies to form lines and exchange fire. They expected battles of attrition where superior numbers always won. The Achilles Protocol threw away those expectations entirely. The enemy fleet continued its approach. High Marshal Selvig expected the humans to either flee or form a defensive line. He prepared for a standard engagement, the kind he had won 100 times before. He was surprised when the human ships suddenly scattered. "What are they doing?" he demanded. His tactical officers studied the displays. "They are breaking formation, moving in small groups of 3 to 5 ships. Their movements are unpredictable." Selvig felt a flicker of annoyance. "They run like frightened animals. Target the largest groups and destroy them." The Dominion ships opened fire. Massive energy beams cut through space, aimed at where the human ship should have been. But the Terran vessels moved at the last moment, dodging and weaving in patterns that seemed random, but were carefully calculated. On the Sovereignty, Yuna called out commands with incredible speed. "Group Alpha, break left. Group Delta, dive under. Group Echo, circle around their flank." The human ships moved like a pack of wolves, not like soldiers in formation. They struck at weak points in the Dominion line, fired quick bursts of weapons fire, and retreated before the enemy could respond. It was chaos, but it was controlled chaos. High Marshal Selvig watched in growing frustration. His massive fleet was like a giant trying to catch insects. Every time he focused on one group, 3 others attacked from different angles. "Enough of this," he snarled. "All ships, break formation and pursue. Run them down." It was exactly what Daesung had been waiting for. "Now," the Admiral ordered, "activate cascade missiles." Across the Terran fleet, hatches opened and missiles launched. They were small compared to Dominion weapons, barely visible on sensors. The enemy ships ignored them, focusing on the human vessels that continued to dance around them. The first cascade missile hit a Dominion cruiser. Nothing seemed to happen for half a second. Then the ship began to fold in on itself, like paper being crumpled by an invisible hand. Metal screamed and bent. The entire vessel collapsed into a sphere no larger than a house, then exploded. Silence fell on the bridge of the Eternal Dominance. High Marshal Selvig stared at his display, unable to understand what he had just seen. What was that? He whispered Dot before anyone could answer. More missiles hit. Ship after ship crumpled and collapsed. The Dominion fleet, so confident moments ago, began to panic. Vessels broke formation, trying to flee from weapons they could not understand. Lieutenant Choi Subin laughed at her navigation console. It was not a cruel laugh, but the release of tension. They do not know what to do. They have never seen anything like this. "Stay focused," Daesung commanded. "This is not over yet." He was right. The Dominion still had superior numbers, and High Marshal Selvig was not a fool. The reptilian commander gathered his wits and issued new orders. "Spread out," Selvig commanded. "Give those missiles more targets. And launch fighters. If their ships are too fast, we will swarm them." Thousands of small fighters poured from the Dominion carriers. They filled the space around the battle like angry insects. The human ships could not dodge forever. The battle became more desperate. Terran ships took hits. The TSS Perseverance, one of humanity's newest carriers, was struck by multiple beams and broke apart. The crew had seconds to reach escape pods. Some made it. Many did not. They soon felt each loss like a punch to his chest. These were his people, his responsibility, but he could not let grief stop him. All ships, initiate Omega Maneuver, he ordered. The Terran fleet suddenly stopped scattering and came together in a tight formation. The Dominion fighters swarmed toward them, sensing victory. But as they closed in, the human ships fired in a coordinated burst, creating a wall of energy that vaporized hundreds of fighters at once, before the enemy could recover. The Terran fleet broke apart again and resumed their Wolfpack tactics. More Cascade missiles launched. More Dominion ships folded and collapsed. The battle lasted 6 hours. 6 hours of constant movement, constant firing, constant death. By the end, the space around Nova Bazan was filled with debris. Broken ships from both sides floated among the stars. High Marshal Selvig looked at his displays and felt something he had not felt in centuries: fear. He had started with 400 ships. He now had less than 200. The humans had lost 11 vessels, less than 20% of their fleet. "This is impossible," he said. His voice shook. "They are primitives. They should not be able to do this." His tactical officer was pale. "Marshal, they are regrouping. They are preparing another attack." Selvig made a decision he had never made before. "All ships retreat. Fall back to fold space. We are leaving." The remains of the correction fleet turned and ran. They vanished into fold space, leaving behind the wreckage of 200 ships and the dreams of easy conquest. On the Sovereignty, the bridge crew watched them go. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Subin began to laugh, and others joined her. Tears streamed down faces. Soldiers embraced. The tension of hours of battle released all at once. Daesung did not celebrate. He thought of the 11 ships they had lost. He thought of the thousands of crew members who would not return home. Victory had a price, and he felt its weight. Captain Yuna stood beside him. "Admiral, we won. Against 400 ships, we won." "Yes," he said quietly, "but they will be back." This was just the first battle. The real war is only beginning. He opened a communication channel to all ships in the fleet. His voice was steady, carrying across the void to every surviving vessel. "This is Admiral Kim Daesung. Today we faced an enemy that believed we were weak. Today we showed them the truth. We are not weak. We are humanity. We are survivors. We are fighters. We are the species that refuse to die." He paused, letting his words settle. "To those we lost today, we honor your sacrifice. Your names will be remembered forever. To those who survive, our work is not finished. The Dominion will return with greater force. We must be ready." Then he broadcast one final message. Unopened channels that the Dominion could hear. Correction denied. Across the galaxy, species that had submitted to the Dominion centuries ago heard that message. They heard about the battle. They heard about the impossible victory. And for the first time in thousands of years, they began to hope that something had changed. A crack had formed in the foundation of an empire. And that crack would only grow. News of the battle at Nova Bazan spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. In every corner of Dominion space, beings whispered about the impossible. A species less than 400 years old had defeated the correction fleet. 200 ships destroyed by 60. The Dominion had never known such a defeat. Their reputation of invincibility, built over 12,000 years, cracked like ancient ice. On the Citadel of Order, Primarch Varl called an emergency session of the High Council. The 12 leaders gathered in the Grand Chamber, but the mood was very different from before. Fear hung in the air like a poison. "This is unacceptable," growled the representative of the Orin. His species had led the correction fleet. Their shame was greatest. "We must mobilize the full armada. Every ship in Dominion space. Crush these humans completely." The floating jellyfish of the Volan flickered with uncertain light. "And how many ships will we lose? How many worlds will rebel while our fleets are focused on Terra? Already we receive reports of unrest. Species that have been quiet for centuries are beginning to ask questions." Another council member spoke. She was from the Delph, a race of tall, thin beings with skin like silver. "The humans have a weapon we do not understand. Our scientists are analyzing the wreckage, but they cannot explain how their missiles work. Until we understand this technology, we cannot guarantee victory." Voral listened to each speaker. He was ancient, older than any of them, and he had survived by understanding power. He saw clearly what was happening. The Dominion's strength had always been its reputation. Species submitted because they believed resistance was hopeless. The humans had proven that belief false. If the Dominion launched a full attack and failed, the entire structure could collapse. 12,000 years of order would crumble. Chaos would spread across the galaxy. But if they did nothing, species would see weakness. They would rebel anyway. There was no good option. Only less bad ones. A messenger entered the chamber and approached the Primarch. "Your Excellency, a transmission has arrived from Terra. The humans wish to speak." Voral's compound eyes glittered. "Put it through." The holographic image of President Lihana appeared in the center of the chamber. She stood straight and calm, dressed in simple white robes. Behind her stood Admiral Kim Dae-sung, a reminder of what happened when Terra was pushed. "Primarch Voral," Hana said, "members of the High Council, we did not seek conflict with the Dominion. We came to the galaxy hoping to find friends and partners. Instead, we found demands for submission. We rejected those demands, as any free people would." She paused, letting her words settle across the chamber. "Your fleet attacked our colonies. We defended ourselves. Many lives were lost on both sides. This cannot continue. A war between Terra and the Dominion would devastate the galaxy. Neither of us wants that." Voral leaned forward on his throne. "What do you propose, human? Surely you do not expect us to simply accept your defiance." "I expect nothing," Hana replied. "I offer something. A new way forward." She gestured, and a holographic document appeared beside her. "We propose a treaty. Not submission. Not war. Partnership. A true galactic community where every species, young or old, has a voice in making laws that affect them all." The chamber erupted with angry voices. Partnership? With primitives who have barely left their solar system? They dared to suggest equality with the elder species? This is an insult to 12,000 years of history. Varl raised his arm for silence. When the noise died down, he addressed the human directly. "You propose that we share power with you? That your 3 centuries equal our 12,000 years of governance?" Dae-sung stepped forward. His voice was clear and strong. "We propose that you evolve. The galaxy is bigger than your dominion. You have maintained order through fear and force. But fear fades when someone proves it is unfounded. Force fails when it meets equal force. Your old ways are ending. The question is whether you will be part of what comes next." Varl stared at the human for a long time. In his long life, he had seen many things. He had seen empires rise and fall. He had seen species flourish and die. He had always believed the Dominion would last forever. Now, looking at this strange, stubborn, impossible species, he was not so sure. "We will consider your proposal," he said finally. "The council will vote." The transmission ended. Debate raged through the chamber for hours. Some demanded war, regardless of the cost. Others argued for negotiation. A few even suggested that the Dominion had grown old and rigid, that new ideas might strengthen rather than weaken them. The vote came at the end of a long day. It was close, very close. But when the final count was made, the majority supported negotiation, not because they believed in equality, not because they respected humanity, but because they feared what would happen if they refused. Pragmatism won over pride. The Galactic Compact was drafted over the following months. Terran diplomats traveled to the Citadel. Dominion representatives came to Earth. Long nights of negotiation followed. There were arguments and threats and moments when everything nearly fell apart. But in the end, an agreement emerged. The Compact created a new structure. The High Council would remain, but it would share power with an assembly where every species had equal representation. Galactic law would be rewritten through consensus, not command. Military action would require approval from both bodies. It was not perfect. The elder species still held advantages. Old prejudices did not disappear, but it was better than what had existed before. It was a start. 1 year after the battle at Nova Bizon, the Galactic Compact was signed. Representatives from hundreds of species gathered on a neutral station to witness the moment. President Lee Hanna signed for humanity. Primok Voral signed for the Dominion. Dozens of other leaders added their marks. At the ceremony, Admiral Kim Dae-sung stood with his crew. Captain Park Yuna was beside him, wearing her dress uniform. Commander Baek Junho stood nearby, looking uncomfortable in formal clothes. Lieutenant Choi Soo-bin smiled, tears in her eyes. "We did it," Yuna whispered. "We actually changed the galaxy." Dae-sung nodded slowly. "We started something. Others will finish it. That is how change works. Each generation does what it can and passes the torch to the next." After the ceremony, Varl approached the human delegation. The massive insectoid towered over them, his presence still intimidating despite the new treaty. "I have watched species for thousands of years," Varl said. "I thought I understood how things worked. I thought I knew the limits of what was possible." He paused, his compound eyes fixed on Dae-sung. "I was wrong. You are strange creatures, you humans. Violent and peaceful. Simple and complex. Weak and strong. I do not fully understand you." "Perhaps that is the point," Dae-sung replied. "Understanding grows over time. We will learn about each other." Vorl made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Perhaps. Or perhaps you will surprise us again. You seem to be good at that." The following years were not easy. Changing an empire was slow work. There were setbacks and conflicts. Some species refused to accept the new order. Some humans grew impatient with the pace of change, but the foundation held. The Compact survived its first tests. And slowly, very slowly, the galaxy began to transform. Admiral Kim Dae-sung retired 10 years after the signing. He moved to a small house on the California coast, overlooking the Pacific Ocean. He spent his days reading and gardening and watching the sunset. Sometimes visitors came to hear his stories. He told them about the stars and the strange beings that lived among them. He told them about the choice humanity had faced and the path they had chosen. Captain Park Yuna took command of the sovereignty and led the first fleet for 2 decades. She became the most respected officer in Terran history, a symbol of courage and skill. Commander Baek Junho became humanity's first ambassador to the Citadel. He spent years building bridges between species, using his intelligence training to understand alien minds and find common ground. President Lee Hanna served 2 more terms before retiring. She was remembered as the leader who guided humanity through its greatest test, without losing sight of its values. And across the galaxy, species young and old learned a lesson they would not forget. The universe was full of wonders and dangers. Ancient empires rose and fell. Laws changed. Boundaries shifted. But some things remained constant. Courage mattered. Principles mattered. The willingness to stand for what you believed, even against impossible odds, mattered. Humanity had arrived in the galaxy as newcomers, dismissed as primitives by elder species. They had been told to submit, to obey, to know their place. They had refused, and in refusing, they had changed everything. In the end, the galaxy did not remember humanity for their weapons or their ships. They remembered them for something simpler. When told to kneel, they stood. When told to obey, they questioned. When told to accept their place, they built a new one. That was the human way. That was the legacy they left among the stars, and it would echo through the ages forever.